Yeah, sorry I'm a little behind on the videos. I'm trying to catch back up, but admittedly I'm in the last, the home stretch to getting the bachelor's. Got about a month left, and it's just, yeah, I'll just be glad when all this shit's over, right? So, doesn't bode very well, especially during draft time. I, for the record, have done some watching of some prospects. I have some scouting reports ready to record and upload, and hopefully I'll get to them very soon. So that's about all I can say about that. But we are a few weeks away from the NFL draft. Is it exciting? I believe it's about 3 weeks away now. So, mock drafts start to take on a level of additional seriousness. Things really start to shake out. Some things that we believe for months, we find out will not be true. Some things we've started to suspect could be true, we find out may potentially be. And we also realize that we don't know a lot. We just don't know right now. And I think that holds true with this draft class in particular because let's just call it what it is. This, at least on the surface, is not a great draft class. I'm not going to say it's like doo-doo dog shit. And sometimes we got to be really careful with throwing that doo-doo draft label out there, right? Because 1992 was a dog shit draft. It really was. But if you remember, 2013 was supposed to be a dog shit draft too. You had guys like Honey Badger in that draft, and you had guys like Travis Kelce was a third-round pick in that draft, just like Honey Badger was, and there were other guys, stars, Hall of Famers, even for special teams like Cordero Patterson's an all-time return man. So, even though the top of the draft had some notable bust and some boo-boo in there, Geno Smith's went on to find his way in the NFL, and he's become a successful starting quarterback. We got to be careful throwing around that this draft is dog shit label. I will agree, when you look at it, there's probably somewhere between 6 to 8 real blue chip prospects. And then you get to that mix of somewhere between 7 to 30, 7 to 40, where there's not a whole lot of difference. There really isn't. So it'll be fascinating to see what that means in terms of, kind of draft strategy in 3 weeks. Does that mean that teams are going to be more aggressive to try and move up for the few blue chip talents that are in this draft? Or are they just going to say, you know what, fuck it, we'll just sit here, let the board fall where it may, and we're not going to give up picks this year. And in particular, we're not going to hurt ourselves next year, especially if that draft ends up being better at the top and or deeper. But let's talk about this mock draft as it is. It's a full 3-round edition, So there you go. I put a little more work into this one. Admittedly, this was done about 3 days ago, and I just haven't had the chance to record it, but we are here now. No notable change at the top for pick 1 or pick 2. Still Cam Ward and Abdul Carter. Right now, if I had to put betting odds on those being the top 2 picks, I would say it's greater than 50%. Cam Ward feels like about a 90 or 95% bet. The Titans would be pretty dumb at this point not to take him. You got to take him and just build around him and hope it works out. There just really isn't a whole lot of other debate. To those that are saying, well, they think an Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter is a better player. Maybe theoretically they are, but let's say you think Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft, but maybe you have Cam Ward ranked 7th or 8th, then the answer is obvious. You take the fucking quarterback. Any other opinion to the contrary is just dumbass wrong. It just is. You can't, right? What? You draft Abdul Carter and then what? You still have a quarterback problem. I'm just saying. So Tennessee's going to take Cam Ward, as they should. And then we assume Cleveland's going to take Abdul Carter, which on the one hand, be fascinating to see Myles Garrett and Abdul Carter on the same defensive line getting after the quarterback. Could be scary for opposing offenses, but maybe they're going to trade for Kirk Cousins and they're going to let him and Kenny Pickett battle it out. But yeah, that's a dog shit situation. Good luck, Mr. Carter. You're going to need it. Which brings us to the Giants and probably the first big change or shocker or whatever you want to put it in terms of my mock draft. And that is I don't have the Giants taking Shedeur Sanders at number 3. And there's a couple of drivers behind this. Number one, they did just sign Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, although granted to Russell Wilson a 1-year deal, Jameis to backup money. But it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to have given Russell Wilson that much money this year and then bring in Jameis and then you have Shedeur. Yeah. Like if you're the Giants, you're sitting there and saying to yourself, do we feel so great about Shedeur in his upside as a quarterback that we just have to take him here at 3? Or do we think that we could take another high level player like a Travis Hunter at 3 and then roll the dice, take the chances, and maybe hope one or two of these quarterbacks like a Shedeur or a Jackson Dart is available on the board later in round 1. And you trade back up into round 1 to go get him. It might be the strategy here for the Giants. I've got him taking Travis Hunter here, and I have it as a wide receiver. So those that are saying, hey, they have Travis Hunter as the number 1 player in this draft, is that solely based on whether you're projecting him as a corner or as a wide receiver? Because that's what you've got to do. You can't sit there and say, this is some Shohei Ohtani Major League Baseball shit, where he could be an everyday player and then be a pitcher every 5th day. It doesn't work like that. You're not going to play him every single snap as a wide receiver and every single snap as a corner. So you have to pick the position that you think he's going to stick at, and you grade him primarily based off of that. And then maybe throw in a little bit extra. So maybe that still puts him as the best player on your board. Maybe, but, it's a thing of like, as a wide receiver, do you think he's a Devontae Smith type, or do you think he's like a Justin Jefferson type? As a corner, do you think he's like a Patrick Peterson type? The Giants, I'm sure, would love to find out. And boy, it would be exciting to see him in the big New York media market. Feels like a good fit there all around. And then as you go along, like, I really wonder for some of these guys, like, something about Mason Graham, like, I don't know, next time I do a mock, you might see him lower. This vibe I've got right now, like, could be wrong here, but for now I've still got him going Jacksonville to 5, which I think a lot of people have, but I'm just not sure that I'm fully convinced of that, and I wonder if some teams have Kenneth Grant actually ranked higher on their draft board. In terms of the offensive linemen, you'll see a couple win in the top 7 here. Membou going 4 to the Patriots, and Will Campbell going 7 to the Jets. Just as easily could flip that right. I could see it going that way as well. As silly as it may or may not sound, Will Campbell's arms magically all of a sudden measuring 33 inches. Could be a bit of a game changer in terms of his draft position, although I still have some questions about him and his technique. But if you're drafting him that high, you got to be drafting him as a tackle. You got to play him at tackle first. But those are teams there, when you talk about the Patriots and the Jets, they desperately need to address the offensive line. And I'd be surprised if they didn't here. Again, to all those Bears fans that are talking about Ashton, Jeanty and the possibility of 10, especially when you look at the context of this draft, it just doesn't make much sense that he would make it there to the Bears at 10. This is not a great draft at the top. There are not a lot of blue chip players. Ashton Jeanty is one of them. So whether it is contrary to what anybody else fucking wants to believe, I say the draft range for Ashton Jeanty is anywhere from 3 with the Giants to 10 with the Bears. That is a lot of teams to go through to assume that he would still be there for Chicago at 10. I'd be stunned. And I think right now we're kind of landing in the safety spot of that he would end up with the Raiders. Yeah, I would be surprised if that didn't happen. It might not, right? Stranger shit has happened. Some of you might be surprised about Jalon Walker in the top 10. I think some teams are going to look at him and look at the intriguing athletic upside, his ability as an edge rusher, think he's going to be some type of Micah Parsons player, and they're going to roll the dice. They're going to view him as like a blue chip talent and risk it and say, like, we think we could develop him into that type of dude. Like, those are the types of guys in a draft like this that you swing on and you take a little bit higher than maybe you would in like other years. In other drafts that were maybe stronger at the top, Jalon Walker is like a mid to late first round pick. But in this draft, taking him in the top 10 is certainly sensible in my opinion. As is taking a tight end like a Tyler Warren in the top 10. Somebody's probably going to. And it may end up being Chicago if he's there. But again, it could be another situation of the Jets could take him there at 7. Carolina could take him at 8. The Saints could certainly take him at 9. Like, it is possible, right? And in this type of draft, it's just hard to know. Now, inevitably, we get to the Bears bias section here. Before we do that, let me talk about the quarterbacks really quickly. Something about Shedeur in Pittsburgh at 21 would be something I'd be interested to see. But I want to call out one thing here. Since I didn't account for any trades in my mock draft scenario, this is more of a reflection of where I think right now those players would go in terms of Shedeur at 21 and Jackson Dart at 26. That doesn't mean those are the teams that they end up with, but you could certainly make an argument that Pittsburgh would benefit from having Shedeur Sanders, although if they're going to sit there and go down the Aaron Rodgers path, then they're just dumb. And then the Rams at 26 with Jackson Dart certainly could make a lot of sense for them and for him, and not have the pressure of playing him right away. And it would make sense in that situation because you could argue, well, they're a better team with Matthew Stafford right now. That's a situation where when you do draft a young quarterback, it is okay for them to sit behind the starter because the starter is clearly a step better, right? But to the Bears really quickly. I'm sure a number of Bears fans are going to go to the comments and hate on me for what they see in this mock draft, especially early. But I have talked about this before, and I will talk about this again. This is not a draft for need. This is a draft where you're trying to get top-level talent because this roster is big-time lacking in it. Their best player right now is an over 30-year-old left guard that they just traded a fourth-round pick in 2026 for. That's their best player is Joe Thuney. No disrespect, but that's not good. You know, and I start to wonder with Bears fans a little bit, like if you had Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs, and Peanut Tillman available in this draft, they'd be talking about passing up on all three of them because, oh, it's got to draft offense, or you got to draft trenches. Yeah, the foundation, the fundamentals are the quarterback and the trenches on both sides of the ball. I'm 100% aligned. But at some point in time, you just need fucking players. You need guys that can get the shit done. And if you think a Will Johnson can be a top flight corner in the league and you pair him with Jalon Johnson and Kyler Gordon, now you've got a defense that it opens up some real damn possibilities with what you could do in terms of your blitz packages and so forth, what you do in coverage. It becomes a tough defense to throw the football against. And then you double that up with a linebacker like Schlesinger early in round 2. Yeah, I know it feels counterintuitive for a guy like me that's talked so much about offense to all of a sudden pull out a mock draft where the top 2 picks are defense for the Bears. But if that's the way the board falls, I could make an argument in both instances that they would be the best player available on the board at that particular moment in time. The Bears would be fucking dumb if they didn't take him at that point, if that's the way the board fell and they were the best players still on the board. The Bears need fucking talent on both sides of the ball. You cannot solely win track meets in the NFL. You have to play some level of defense at some point. And even the way this kind of mock transpired, like getting Ursery at the early part of round 2, I doubt he's there, but if he was, that'd be a great get for the Bears. It would be. And to the folks that are talking about, well, it sounds like they're not giving up on Amagaji. Maybe they're not. I think that's kind of psychotic. But what do you expect him to run him down and shit all over him in public? I mean, come on, people. Let's have brains here for a second. Like, why would they say that? I don't know. But, you know, I would still look at this draft. If you told me they came out with a top-flight corner, a top-flight linebacker for a defense that badly needs that top-flight linebacker, a guy in Ursery that long-term could either be your potential replacement for Braxton Jones at left tackle or maybe kick inside in the future, like, you still address the trenches there. And as you get to round 3, like, some of you are going to look at, like, what about some of these other running backs? You know, Bashal Tutin, I look at him and I say he's got the type of speed, and I think his receiving skills are a little underrated, but he would fit, like, the Jahmyr Gibbs type of role. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but he brings some of those similar elements to the running game that I think Ben Johnson would really value. Like, I would be pleased as punch if the Bears walked away with a draft like this. So anyways, what I'll say is take a look at my mock. It's all 3 rounds in the description box. Let me know how much you hate it. And I'll be back with a couple more mock drafts. And hopefully in the next day or 2, you'll start seeing some of the scouting reports flood in, kicking off with the quarterbacks, obviously. And it'll start with Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, and so forth.